I was reaching for my coffee when I heard my daughter's voice through the phone she'd forgotten to hang up. "He has to go to a nursing home, Mom. We can't wait any longer." My hand froze mid-air. Jennifer continued, "Once he's gone, we'll sell the house for at least $3 million. Split it 3 ways between you, me, and Brad." My son-in-law Brad laughed. "The old man won't even know what hit him." That's when I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. The ceramic mug in my hand suddenly felt as heavy as the 35 years I'd spent raising Jennifer on my own. Ellen had died when our daughter was just 12, leaving me to navigate the treacherous waters of single parenthood while working double shifts at Baxter & Associates, the forensic accounting firm where I'd built my career. I set the mug down carefully on the granite countertop of my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd taught Jennifer to bake her mother's chocolate chip cookies, where we'd shared countless dinners, talking about her dreams of going to Stanford. The morning sun streamed through the bay windows of my Victorian home in Pacific Heights, casting long shadows across the original hardwood floors. I'd refinished myself when we first moved in. My name is Boyd Richardson, and at 67 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of financial fraud there was. For 40 years, I'd investigated embezzlement schemes, uncovered money laundering operations, and testified in court cases that sent white-collar criminals to federal prison. But nothing in my professional experience had prepared me for the betrayal I'd just overheard from my own flesh and blood. The phone call was still active. I could hear Jennifer moving around, probably in her Mercedes, the one I'd helped her buy when she got her real estate license 5 years ago. She was talking to her mother-in-law, Margaret, a woman who'd worked as a nurse for 30 years before retiring, and who'd always struck me as having an unhealthy interest in other people's assets. "Brad's found the perfect place," Margaret was saying. "Golden Sunset Manor. My nephew runs it, so we can get him in quickly. No waiting list, no awkward questions." "How soon can we move forward?" Jennifer asked. There was an eagerness in her voice that cut deeper than any blade. "The doctor will come by next week. Dr. Haversham, he's very understanding about these situations. Once we have his assessment stating your father needs full-time care, we can activate power of attorney." I quietly picked up my smartphone and started recording, making sure to capture every word. The forensic accountant in me knew the value of evidence, even as the father in me wanted to hang up and pretend I'd never heard any of this. Brad's voice joined the conversation. "I've already had 3 investors interested in the property. Cash buyers, all of them. That neighborhood is gold right now. We could have the money within 30 days of listing." 30 days, Jennifer repeated. "God, we need it. You know how much we owe Mom." "Bradley's investments will turn around," Margaret soothed. "Everyone has setbacks. Once we have the house money, you can start fresh." I'd met Brad Sherman 8 years ago when Jennifer brought him to Thanksgiving dinner. He was handsome in that artificial way, with 2 white teeth and a practiced smile. Said he was a day trader, which should have been my first warning. But Jennifer was 34 then, and I could see how much she wanted to settle down, have the family life her mother and I had planned before cancer stole Ellen away. The wedding was beautiful. I walked Jennifer down the aisle in the same church where I'd married her mother, paid for the reception at the St. Francis Hotel, and gave them a check for $50,000 to start their life together. Brad had gripped my hand that day, looked me in the eye, and promised to take care of my little girl. Some promises, I was learning, meant nothing to some people. "Dad's been getting more forgetful," Jennifer was saying now. "Last week he called me Ellen twice." That was true. I had called her Ellen, but not because I was confused. Sometimes when the light hit her face just right, she looked so much like her mother, it took my breath away. I'd said it out of love, out of memory, out of the bittersweet recognition that my daughter had grown into the image of the woman I'd lost. "Perfect," Margaret replied. "Document everything, every confusion, every mistake. We'll need a clear pattern for Dr. Haversham." I ended the recording and set my phone down. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. 40 years of maintaining composure in front of hostile witnesses and corrupt executives had trained me well, but inside my heart was breaking into pieces I wasn't sure could ever be reassembled. The house around me suddenly felt different. This Victorian lady had sheltered us through everything, her strong bones and generous rooms providing sanctuary through Ellen's illness, through Jennifer's teenage rebellions, through my years of rebuilding our lives. Now, my daughter saw her as nothing more than a commodity to be liquidated. I walked to my home office, original pocket doors sliding smoothly on tracks I'd restored myself. The walls were lined with photos. Jennifer's graduation from Stanford, her real estate license ceremony, her wedding. Ellen smiled from a dozen frames forever. Young forever. Beautiful, forever trusting that I'd take care of our daughter. Sitting at my desk, I opened my laptop and pulled up my calendar. According to Jennifer and her conspirators, I was a confused old man who needed to be warehoused for his own good. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Carl Morrison. Carl had been a detective with the SFPD's Financial Crimes Unit before going private. We'd worked dozens of cases together over the years, and he owed me more favors than either of us could count. "Boyd," he answered on the second ring. "Haven't heard from you in months. How's retirement treating you?" "Carl," I said, "I need your help, and I need absolute discretion." "You've got it. What's going on?" "I need you to investigate my daughter, her husband, and her mother-in-law. Full financial workup, any debts, any pressure points, and Carl, they can't know." There was a pause. Carl had met Jennifer several times at department functions. "You sure about this, Boyd? I just heard them planning to put me in a nursing home so they can sell my house." "Jesus, when do you need this?" "Yesterday." "I'll start today." "Boyd, I'm sorry." After hanging up, I made my second call to Wallace Sterling, the estate attorney, who'd helped me structure my finances after Ellen died. Wallace was old school, a man who believed in proper planning and ironclad documentation. "Boyd," he greeted me, "what can I do for you?" "I need to review the trust documents, all of them. And Wallace, I may need to make some changes." Over the next hour, as the morning sun climbed higher over San Francisco Bay, I laid the groundwork for what was to come. But first, I had a part to play. If Jennifer wanted a confused old man, I'd give her exactly that. The next few weeks would require the performance of my lifetime. I'd stumble over words, misplace items, forget appointments. Each mistake would be carefully calculated, documented by my own surveillance system, building a record of their deception alongside my manufactured decline. As I prepared for the opening act of this tragedy, I thought about Ellen. She'd always said Jennifer had a good heart underneath her ambitions. She just needs to find her way. Ellen would tell me during Jennifer's difficult teenage years. Sometimes people have to lose themselves before they can be found. I hoped Ellen was right, because what I was about to do would either destroy my relationship with my daughter forever or save her from becoming someone neither of us would recognize. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the curtain was about to rise on a drama none of them saw coming. 3 weeks had passed since I'd overheard that fateful phone conversation. 3 weeks of carefully orchestrated confusion, strategically placed bills left on counters, and practiced looks of bewilderment when Jennifer would find me staring at family photos. Each performance was recorded by the discreet security cameras I'd had installed throughout the house years ago, cameras my daughter never knew existed. On a foggy Thursday morning, I executed the next phase of my plan. The marble floor of my bathroom had been recently polished, and I'd made sure to splash some water near the shower. When everything was ready, I sat down carefully on the floor, mussed my hair, and reached for my phone. "Jennifer." I made my voice sound weak, frightened. "I've had a fall. I can't seem to get up." "Oh my God, Dad. Don't move, I'll be right there." She lived only 20 minutes away in Noe Valley, in a house I'd helped them buy with a substantial down payment. I used the time to review my appearance in the mirror, adjusting my expression to look properly shaken. The man staring back at me seemed fragile, vulnerable. Nothing like the forensic accountant who'd once made hardened criminals sweat on the witness stand. Jennifer arrived in 15 minutes, must have broken several traffic laws. But she wasn't alone. Brad followed her in, along with Margaret, and two people I'd never seen before, a man and woman in professional attire, carrying leather portfolios. "Dad?" Jennifer rushed to my side, helping me stand. Her concern seemed genuine, which made what I knew all the more painful. "What happened?" "I don't know," I mumbled, letting her guide me to the living room. One moment I was fine, the next. I trailed off, noticing how Brad was already appraising the crown molding and original fixtures. Margaret stepped forward with practiced efficiency, checking my pupils, taking my pulse. "Boyd, you gave us quite a scare. Have you been dizzy lately? Any confusion?" I let my eyes drift, unfocused. "Sometimes I forget things. Little things. Where I put my keys, what day it is." The two strangers were introduced as Nancy Hillcrest and James Padding from Golden Sunset Manor. They smiled with the calculated warmth of salespeople settling onto my sofa, as if they belonged there. "Mr. Richardson." Nancy began opening a glossy brochure. "We specialize in caring for distinguished gentlemen like yourself. Our facility offers dignity, comfort, and, most importantly, safety." The brochure showed smiling seniors playing chess in manicured gardens, nothing like the reality Carl's investigation had uncovered. 3 lawsuits for neglect, 2 suspicious deaths, and a Medicare fraud investigation that Margaret's nephew had somehow dodged. "I don't need a nursing home," I protested weakly, playing my part. "This is my home. Ellen and I bought it together." "Dad." Jennifer took my hand, and I had to resist the urge to pull away. "Mom's been gone for 25 years. You can't keep living in the past." Brad leaned forward, his expression sympathetic, in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Boyd, we're just thinking about your safety. This house is so big, so many stairs. What if you fell, and no one was here? We could have someone check on you daily," Margaret suggested, right on cue. "Ensure you're taking your medications, eating properly." I hadn't taken so much as an aspirin in 5 years, but I nodded vaguely. "My medications. Yes, I sometimes forget those too." James Padding produced a tablet, swiping through photos of Golden Sunset Manor. Each image was carefully curated, hiding the peeling paint and understaffed reality. "We have an opening in our premium wing. Normally there's a waiting list, but given your situation—" "My situation?" I asked, injecting a note of confusion. "Your family's concern for your well-being," Nancy clarified smoothly. "It's clear they love you very much." Love. The word tasted bitter as I watched my daughter nod earnestly. Love was working double shifts to pay for Stanford. Love was holding her hair back when chemotherapy made her mother too weak to do it. Love was teaching her to drive in the Marina District patient through every stalled start and panicked stop. This wasn't love. This was greed wearing a mask. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Of course," Margaret soothed. "But Dad, we should probably have Dr. Haversham examine you just to establish a baseline. He's a family friend, very discreet." The doctor arrived an hour later, a thin man with nervous hands who smelled of cigarettes and mint. His examination was a joke clearly designed to reach a predetermined conclusion. He asked me to remember 3 words, then distracted me with other questions before asking me to recall them. I deliberately fumbled too. "What year is it, Boyd?" I hesitated, then said, 19. "No, 2000. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure." Jennifer made a small sound of distress. Brad put his arm around her, the picture of a supportive husband. Only Margaret watched with calculating eyes, probably already spending her share of my supposed estate. Throughout the performance, my smartwatch was recording everything. Audio biometric data, showing my steady pulse despite my confused act, even GPS coordinates proving everyone's location. Evidence that would be crucial when the time came. After Dr. Haversham left, promising to write his assessment, the intervention began in earnest. They'd arranged my living room like a tribunal with me, in my recliner facing their united front. "Dad." Jennifer started tears, threatening, "We've watched you decline for months. The forgetfulness, the confusion now this fall. We can't ignore it anymore." "Golden Sunset Manor is the best facility in the Bay Area," Margaret added. "My nephew David runs it personally. You'll have your own room, excellent care activities." "It's expensive," I muttered, knowing exactly how expensive. "My savings." "Don't worry about that," Brad said quickly. Too quickly. "We'll handle the finances. The important thing is your health." They talked for another hour, a coordinated assault of concern and pressure. Through it all, I played my part, occasionally asking about Ellen, as if she might walk in any moment, fumbling with my coffee cup, staring blankly when Brad mentioned reverse mortgages and estate planning. Finally, they left me with brochures and promises to return tomorrow. I watched from my window as they gathered by Jennifer's Mercedes, their body language shifting from concern to excitement. Brad actually high-fived Margaret. My daughter smiled for the first time all morning. Once their cars disappeared around the corner, I dropped the act. Moving with purpose, I went to my office and called Carl Morrison. "You were right," he said without preamble. "Brad Sherman owes $400,000 to some very unpleasant people. Started with legitimate day trading, moved to borrowing from friends, then found himself in debt to Marcus Volkov's organization." Marcus Volkov. I knew the name from my forensic work. Russian mob specialized in loan sharking and construction rackets. "There's more," Carl continued. "Your daughter's been showing your house to potential buyers for 3 months. She's telling them it'll be available soon, vacant possession guaranteed. And Boyd Margaret's nephew's facility is about to be shut down. State investigators are moving in next week." "Send me everything," I said. "Encrypted files only." My next call was to Wallace Sterling. "I need to see you tomorrow. Bring all the trust documents. And Wallace, prepare papers to remove Jennifer as a beneficiary if certain conditions are met." "What conditions, Boyd?" "If she attempts to have me declared incompetent or committed against my will." There was a long pause. "That's quite serious. You're certain?" "I have recordings, Wallace. They're planning to put me away and sell my house." "Dear God. Yes, I'll prepare everything. Boyd, I'm sorry." Everyone was sorry, but sorry wouldn't stop what was already in motion. That evening, I sat in my study surrounded by photo albums. There was Jennifer at 6, missing her front teeth, grinning on her first day of school. At 16, radiant in her prom dress, rolling her eyes, as I insisted on taking just one more picture. At 22, accepting her diploma, the first in our family to graduate from an elite university. When had it gone wrong? When had my little girl become someone who could plot against her own father? I found my answer in the newer photos. Brad appeared like a cancer spreading through our family memories. Every picture showed Jennifer a little thinner, her smile a little more forced. The designer clothes couldn't hide the stress lines, the expensive jewelry couldn't brighten the dimming light in her eyes. My phone rang. "Jennifer." "Dad, just checking you're okay. That fall scared me." "I'm fine, sweetheart." The endearment came automatically even now. "I've been thinking maybe we rushed things today. But Dad, you have to admit you've been different lately." "Have I?" I asked innocently. "The bills you forgot to pay, calling me Ellen, getting lost coming home from the store last week." I hadn't gotten lost. I'd driven to 3 different ATMs, withdrawing cash, that now sat in a safe deposit box she didn't know existed. But I'd made sure she'd seen me confused at the grocery store, standing in the parking lot, as if I couldn't remember where I'd parked. "Maybe you're right," I conceded. "Maybe I do need help." "Oh, Dad." She sounded relieved. "We just want what's best for you. How about I come by tomorrow and we can go visit Golden Sunset together, just to look?" "All right," I agreed. "Jennifer." "Yes." "I love you, sweetheart, no matter what." There was a pause. When she spoke, her voice was thick. "I love you too, Dad." After hanging up, I poured myself a Scotch 18-year-old Macallan that Ellen and I had saved for special occasions. The amber liquid caught the light, like liquid gold, like the tears I wouldn't let myself shed. Tomorrow, I would let them take me to that hellhole of a facility. I would sign their papers, play their game, become the confused old man they needed me to be. But every moment would be recorded, every word, documented, every betrayal preserved in digital amber. They thought they were moving me off the board like a chess piece that had outlived its usefulness. They had no idea I'd been playing a different game entirely, one where the apparent victim held all the cards. The fog rolled in from the bay, shrouding my windows in gray mist. Somewhere in the city, my daughter was probably celebrating with her husband and mother-in-law, planning how they'd spend my money. Let them plan. Let them dream. Reality, when it came, would be harsh enough. The downtown offices of Sterling Whitman and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a building overlooking the financial district. Wallace Sterling had been my attorney for 25 years, ever since Ellen's diagnosis forced me to confront our mortality and plan for Jennifer's future. Now, sitting in his conference room with its panoramic views of the Bay Bridge, I was planning for a very different future than I'd ever imagined. Wallace spread documents across the polished mahogany table, like tarot cards revealing fate. He was 73, silver-haired, and distinguished with the careful precision of a man who'd spent 5 decades making sure every word, every comma, every clause was exactly right. Let's review what we have. He began adjusting his reading glasses. The Boyd Family Trust, established 1999. Primary asset: the Pacific Heights property, currently valued at approximately $3.2 million. Secondary assets: commercial properties in Oakland, San Mateo, and Walnut Creek. Combined portfolio value, $15.7 million. I nodded. Most people, including my daughter, assumed my wealth came from my salary at Baxter and Associates. They had no idea about the side consulting work, the expert witness fees that sometimes reached 6 figures for a single case, or the investment properties I'd quietly acquired over the decades. Jennifer is currently a beneficiary. Wallace continued, entitled to 25% of the trust upon your death, with the remainder going to charitable organizations as specified. However, Clause 17, subsection C, states that any beneficiary who attempts to have you declared incompetent or commits acts against your interests forfeits their inheritance. I need more than forfeiture, I said. I need active consequences. Wallace leaned back, studying me over his glasses. What did you have in mind? I slid a folder across the table. Everything Carl Morrison found. Brad's gambling debts, the false property listings, the conspiracy to commit elder abuse. I want Jennifer removed as beneficiary the moment I'm committed to that facility. I want the house transferred to a shell company immediately after. And I want them to discover all of this in the most public, humiliating way possible. Boyd, Wallace said carefully, "Are you certain this is your daughter?" My daughter is planning to warehouse me in a facility under investigation for Medicare fraud, so she can sell my house to pay her husband's gambling debts. The words came out harder than I intended. Ellen would never forgive me if I let Jennifer destroy herself this way. Sometimes, Wallace, you have to burn something down to save it. He was quiet for a long moment, then began making notes. Data Tech Industries. We established that shell company 3 years ago for your consulting work. Clean corporate structure, no obvious connection to you. We can transfer the property within 24 hours of any triggering event. Good. Now about the medical evaluation. Wallace smiled thinly. Dr. Sarah Chen, head of geriatric psychiatry at UCSF Medical Center. Impeccable credentials. Unimpeachable reputation. She's agreed to perform a comprehensive evaluation at your request. I've also retained Dr. Michael Reeves to review any assessment performed by this Dr. Haversham. Haversham's going to declare me incompetent, I said. He barely examined me, and Jennifer's already talking about power of attorney. Let him. Every false diagnosis, every fabricated symptom is another count of fraud. The California Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act provides for treble damages plus attorney fees. By the time we're done, they'll owe more than they could ever have gained. I stood, and walked to the windows looking down at the city where I'd built my life. Somewhere down there, Jennifer was probably showing another potential buyer through my home, making promises she had no right to make. "There's something else," I said. "The trust owns the commercial properties free and clear. They generate about $80,000 a month in rental income. I want to establish a foundation in Ellen's name focused on preventing elder financial abuse. Use the rental income to fund it." Wallace made more notes. "That's beautiful, Boyd. Ellen would have loved that." "And I want Jennifer to run it," I added. "After she's learned her lesson. After she's lost everything and understood why. Give her a chance to earn redemption." "You're a better man than most," Wallace observed. "No," I corrected. "I'm a father. There's a difference." We spent the next 3 hours reviewing every detail. Corporate structures to hide the property transfer. Legal frameworks to document the fraud. Financial arrangements to ensure Jennifer couldn't claim I was actually incompetent. Every angle covered every possibility anticipated. "What about your personal belongings?" Wallace asked. "If they commit you to the facility, they'll have access to your house." I smiled for the first time that day. "Already handled. A moving company will arrive 1 hour after I'm taken to Golden Sunset. Everything valuable or sentimental goes into storage. They can have the furniture and fixtures, but Ellen's jewelry, the photo albums, the things that matter, those will be safe." "You've thought of everything." "I've had 3 weeks to plan," I reminded him, "and 40 years of investigating fraud. I know how criminals think, because I've spent my career crawling inside their minds. The only difference is that this time, the criminals are my family." Wallace gathered the documents, organizing them into neat stacks. "I'll have everything ready within 48 hours. The moment you're committed, we file. The property transfer will be complete before they even start celebrating." "They're planning a trip to Japan," I said. Jennifer mentioned it on a call I recorded. 2 weeks of luxury travel to celebrate their windfall. "Let them go," Wallace advised. "In fact, encourage it. The farther away they are when reality hits, the better. Harder to file emergency injunctions from Tokyo." I shook his hand and left, taking the elevator down to the parking garage where my Tesla waited. Another thing Jennifer didn't know that I'd embraced technology, that the confused old man who couldn't work his smartphone was an act. The car's computer showed 3 missed calls from her. I didn't call back. Instead, I drove to Carl Morrison's office in the Mission District. Carl ran his private investigation firm from a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and modern security. He met me at the door, his expression grim. "You need to see this," he said, leading me to his office. Multiple monitors showed surveillance footage, financial records, text messages. The depth of betrayal was staggering. Jennifer had been planning this for over a year, ever since Brad's gambling debts had spiraled out of control. The text messages between her and Margaret were particularly damning. "Look at this one." Carl highlighted a conversation from 2 months ago. Jennifer had written, "Dad's getting older. Sometimes I think it would be easier if he was in a home. Professional care, you know." Margaret's response, "Easier for everyone. And that house is just sitting there, 1 old man and 5 bedrooms. Seems wasteful." She was testing the waters, I observed. Building up to it. Gets worse. Carl pulled up bank records. Brad's been moving money offshore. Small amounts, but consistent. He's planning to run if Volkov's people come calling. With or without your daughter. Jennifer doesn't know. Doubt it. She's too focused on the house. But Boyd, there's something else. Margaret's nephew, David. He's not just running a bad facility. He's been systematically draining residents' accounts. Small amounts covered as incidental expenses. Most families don't notice, and the residents, well, they're not in a position to complain. My hands clenched involuntarily. "How much evidence do you have?" "Enough for the FBI to take interest. Financial crimes across state lines, vulnerable victims. This could go federal." I thought about the residents at Golden Sunset Manor, confused and forgotten, being robbed by the very people supposed to protect them. "Send it to them. Anonymous tip. But wait until after I'm committed. I want them all implicated. Carl studied me. You're playing a dangerous game, Boyd. What if something goes wrong? What if they actually manage to keep you in that place? I pulled out my phone, showing him an app. GPS tracker in my watch. My phone even sewn into my jacket lining. Panic button that alerts you. Wallace and a private security firm. Hidden camera in my glasses recording everything. If they try to keep me longer than 72 hours, cavalry comes. And Jennifer? She'll learn that actions have consequences. That love isn't about taking what you can get, but protecting those who need protection, even from themselves. Carl poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle in his desk. We drank in silence, 2 old warriors planning one last campaign. You know what the hardest part is, I said finally. Ellen always saw the best in people. She'd find excuses for Jennifer, say she was just scared, just desperate. Maybe she'd be right. Or maybe, Carl offered, Ellen would say that letting Jennifer continue down this path would be the real betrayal. You're not destroying your daughter, Boyd. You're trying to save her. I hoped he was right. Because tomorrow, I would sign papers giving my daughter power over my life. I would let them take me to a place that reeked of despair and indifference. I would become the victim they needed me to be. But victims sometimes have teeth, and this one was about to bite. The morning arrived wrapped in San Francisco's typical fog gray and oppressive as the mood in my stomach. I dressed carefully in clothes I deliberately left unwashed hair, uncombed, the image of a man losing his grip on daily life. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Good. That meant the performance was working. Jennifer arrived at 9 sharp with her entourage. Brad carried a folder, thick with documents. Margaret held a small suitcase already packing for me, like I was a child heading to summer camp. Behind them, Dr. Haversham clutched his medical bag, and 2 orderlies from Golden Sunset Manor waited with practiced patience. Morning, Dad. Jennifer kissed my cheek. Her lipstick left a mark I didn't bother to wipe away. Ready for your new adventure. Adventure. Like I was going on vacation instead of being warehoused against my will. Where are we going? I asked, feigning confusion. Remember Dad, Golden Sunset Manor? We visited yesterday. She spoke slowly, as if to a child. I hadn't visited anything yesterday. I'd spent the day transferring final assets and meeting with 3 different recording engineers to ensure every moment of today would be captured in high definition. But I nodded vaguely, playing along. Brad spread the papers on my dining room table, the same table where Jennifer had done her homework every night through high school. Just a few signatures, Boyd. Power of attorney, some medical forms, transfer of house management to ensure bills get paid while you're recovering. Each document was a masterpiece of deception. Medical power of attorney giving Jennifer complete control. Financial power of attorney with broad, sweeping powers. And buried on page 12, a deed transfer form putting the house in Jennifer's name for estate planning purposes. I don't understand all this, I mumbled, pretending to struggle with the pen. That's why we're here, Mr. Richardson, Dr. Haversham said smoothly. To help make these decisions for you. I signed everything my real signature, despite the shaky hand. Each signature was another nail in their legal coffin, evidence of fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. The hidden camera in my glasses caught Brad's smile. Margaret's satisfied nod. Jennifer's momentary hesitation before she witnessed my signature. There. Brad gathered the papers quickly. All done. Now let's get you packed. They went through my house like locusts, deciding what I would and wouldn't need. Margaret packed 7 days of clothes, nothing more. The facility provides laundry service, she explained, already writing me off as a long-term resident. In my bedroom, I watched Jennifer pause at a photo of her and Ellen on the nightstand. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Maybe regret, maybe memory. Then Brad called her to check something, and the moment passed. Is this necessary? Jennifer held up my father's watch, a 1947 Hamilton, that had been passed down through 3 generations. Too valuable for the facility, Margaret decided, setting it aside. Things go missing in these places. The irony of her statement, given what Carl had discovered about her nephew's theft ring, wasn't lost on me. I said nothing, just clutched a photo album to my chest, like a confused old man clinging to memories. The ride to Golden Sunset Manor took 45 minutes. I sat in the back of Jennifer's Mercedes between the 2 orderlies, unnecessary security for an old man who'd gone willingly. Through the window, I watched my city pass by, possibly for the last time if their plan succeeded. "You'll love it there, Dad," Jennifer said from the front seat, her voice artificially bright. "They have activities, a garden, even a library." "Will Ellen visit?" I asked, watching her reaction in the mirror. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Mom's gone, remember?" "Oh," I let my voice break. "Sometimes I forget." Brad turned around, his face a mask of false sympathy. "That's why you need professional care, Boyd. People who understand these conditions. These conditions, like humanity, was a disease that could be cured with institutional indifference." Golden Sunset Manor squatted on the outskirts of Daly City like a cancerous growth. 3 stories of beige stucco and barred windows surrounded by a parking lot cracked with weeds. The sign out front promised, "Compassionate care in your golden years." But the paint was peeling, and one of the O's had fallen off, leaving golden years. Inside, the smell hit immediately. Disinfectant fighting a losing battle against decay, bodily functions, and despair. The lobby tried for cheerful, with faded floral wallpaper and plastic plants, but the fluorescent lights flickered, casting everything in a sickly green pallor. David Kremsky, Margaret's nephew, greeted us at reception. Mid-40s, soft around the middle with the unctuous manner of a funeral director. His handshake was damp, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Mr. Richardson, we're so pleased to welcome you to our family." He gestured around the empty lobby. "As you can see, we maintain a quiet, peaceful environment for our residents." Quiet, because half the residents were over-sedated according to Carl's research. Peaceful, because nobody had the energy to complain. The tour was a masterclass in deception. David showed us the premium wing, first rooms, that were merely shabby instead of squalid. The common areas were strategically cleaned for our visit, but I caught glimpses through doorways of the reality beyond. Residents slumped in wheelchairs staring at nothing. Staff members scrolling phones instead of attending to calls for help. The library Jennifer had mentioned was a single bookshelf of water-damaged paperbacks. "And here's your room," David announced, opening a door to reveal a space smaller than my walk-in closet at home. 2 beds, one already occupied by a man who didn't acknowledge our presence. A single window overlooking the parking lot bars, disguised as decorative grillwork. A bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. "It's cozy," Jennifer managed. "Efficient," David corrected. "We find too much space can be overwhelming for our residents. This encourages community interaction." Community interaction. Forced proximity to strangers while everything familiar was stripped away. I shuffled to the unoccupied bed, sitting down heavily. The mattress was thin, the sheets rough with industrial washing. "Well," Margaret said briskly, "let's get you settled in." They unpacked my meager belongings while discussing me, as if I wasn't there. Medication schedules I didn't need. Dietary restrictions I didn't have. Phone privileges that would be earned through good behavior. "We'll handle the house sale," Brad told David. "Should have everything finalized within the month." "No rush," David replied, though his eyes said otherwise. He was probably calculating his cut already. Jennifer knelt beside my bed, taking my hands. "This is for the best, Dad. You'll see. We'll visit every week." Every week. Like clockwork, until the visits became every month, then holidays only, then not at all. I'd investigated enough elder abuse cases to know the pattern. "My house," I said weakly. "We'll take care of everything," she assured me. "You don't need to worry anymore." Behind her, Brad was already on his phone texting, probably alerting potential buyers that the property was officially available. Margaret chatted with her nephew about Medicare billing codes, casual fraud discussed like grocery shopping. I should go? Jennifer stood abruptly. Let you get acclimated. She hugged me quickly, the kind of hug you give someone with a contagious disease. Brad shook my hand. Margaret patted my shoulder. Then they were gone, leaving me with David Kremsky and the crushing weight of institutional indifference. Dinner's at 5, David informed me. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon. Medications distributed at 8:12 and 8. Any questions? When can I go home? His smile was practiced condescending. This is your home now, Mr. Richardson. The sooner you accept that, the easier it'll be. He left me there with my silent roommate, and the sound of someone crying down the hall. I sat on the thin mattress, still clutching the photo album they'd deemed harmless enough to leave me. Inside were pictures of Jennifer through the years, but also something else. Tucked behind a photo of her college graduation was a business card. Carl Morrison, private investigator. On the back in my handwriting, call if held more than 72 hours. But I wouldn't need 72 hours. I just needed tonight. At dinner, I shuffled to the communal dining room, observing everything. The food was institutional gray, the conversations limited to medications and memories nobody else shared. The staff ate separately, laughing at videos on their phones while residents struggled with plastic utensils. My tablemate introduced herself as Dorothy, 83, abandoned by children who lived 10 minutes away. They visit on my birthday, she said hopefully. Sometimes. After dinner, I was given a paper cup with pills I didn't recognize. For your condition, the nurse said when I asked. I palmed them, pretending to swallow. Later, I'd flush them down the toilet I had to share with my catatonic roommate. Lights out came at 8:30, like we were children at the world's worst summer camp. In the darkness, I could hear the sounds of institutional life. Coughing, crying, someone calling for help that wouldn't come. The night shift staff gathered at the nurse's station, their laughter harsh against the backdrop of misery. I lay on my thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, and thought about Jennifer. She was probably home now, celebrating with Brad and Margaret, planning their Japan trip, calculating how much they'd net from the house sale after paying off Brad's debts. At midnight, I rose quietly and made my way to the bathroom. From the toilet tank, I retrieved the burner phone I'd hidden there during my earlier confusion. One call to Wallace Sterling's emergency line. It's done, I said quietly. I'm in. Documents are filed, he confirmed. Property transfer completes at 9 a.m. The movers arrive at your house at 10. Are you safe? Safe enough. How long until Jennifer knows? She's been removed as beneficiary effective immediately. The trust notification will be sent certified mail tomorrow. As for the house, she'll find out when she tries to enter after their trip. Good. And Wallace. Make sure Datatech Industries hires the best property management company. I want my house maintained perfectly while they're gone. Already arranged. Boyd, are you sure you want to stay there tonight? I thought about Dorothy, about the crying down the hall, about all the forgotten people warehoused in places like this, while their families counted their money. One night, I said, these people deserve a witness. After hanging up, I returned to bed. Tomorrow the game would shift. Jennifer would get her certified letter, but she'd probably ignore it too, focused on their celebration. The house sale she thought was assured would evaporate like morning fog. And I would check myself out of this nightmare, citing the miraculous improvement that would make Dr. Haversham's assessment look like the fraud it was. My roommate stirred, mumbling in his sleep. Martha, he called out. Martha, where are you? She'll come tomorrow, I lied gently. Rest now. He settled back into his drugged sleep, and I lay awake, planning the next phase. Jennifer thought she'd won, thought she'd solved the problem of her inconvenient father. But every general knows that victory declarations before the battle's end are the prelude to defeat. In the morning, I would rise from this institutional grave and show them all what resurrection looked like. But tonight, I would bear witness to the forgotten The abandoned, the betrayed. Ellen would have expected nothing less. 3 days after my miraculous recovery and discharge from Golden Sunset Manor, I sat in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel, watching my daughter's social media feed on my tablet. The elderly, confused man who'd been committed against his will had vanished, replaced by the sharp-eyed forensic accountant I'd always been. The transformation had been so complete that David Kremski had actually stammered when I'd demanded my discharge, suddenly faced with a very different Boyd Richardson than the one who'd been delivered to his facility. Jennifer's Instagram told the story of willful blindness. There she was, at SFO International Champagne Glass, raised captioned, "First class to Tokyo." Sometimes good things come to those who wait. Blessed, Yashed New Beginnings. Brad appeared in the next photo, grinning beside the Japan Airlines first-class check-in. The tickets alone must have cost $15,000. Money they didn't have, borrowed against a house sale that would never happen. Margaret had posted, too, a photo of her designer luggage with the comment, "20 years of sacrifice finally paying off. My son deserves this happiness." Sacrifice. As if scheming to rob an old man blind qualified as hardship. Wallace Sterling joined me for coffee, sliding a folder across the marble table. The certified letters were delivered yesterday. Jennifer signed for hers at 9:15 a.m. And no response. No calls to my office. Nothing. He sipped his espresso thoughtfully. She's either in complete denial or thinks she can deal with it when she returns. I pulled up a flight tracking app. JAL Flight 7 departing in 3 hours. They'll be in the air for 11 hours. Plenty of time for reality to settle in here while they're drinking champagne at 35,000 feet. The movers. Finished yesterday. Every personal item, every piece of Ellen's jewelry, every photo album safe in storage. The house is furnished but empty of memories. Datatech Industries took possession this morning. Wallace nodded approvingly. And Golden Sunset. FBI raided it this morning. David Kremski arrested on federal charges. Medicare fraud, elder abuse theft. The anonymous tip included detailed financial records going back 5 years. I smiled grimly. Margaret's going to land in Tokyo to find her nephews made the evening news. My phone buzzed. Carl Morrison. "You seeing this?" he asked without preamble. "Which part?" "Jennifer's latest post. They're at the champagne bar. She's wearing your mother's emerald necklace." I opened Instagram again. There it was, Ellen's 20th anniversary gift, glinting around my daughter's neck as she toasted her good fortune. She'd taken it from my bedroom, probably while I sat confused and helpless in that facility. "She'll have to give it back," Carl continued. "It's documented in the trust inventory. Theft over 5,000, that's grand larceny." "One thing at a time," I said. "Let them enjoy their delusion. Reality will be harsh enough." Over the next 2 weeks, I watched their Japanese fantasy unfold in real time. The Park Hyatt, Tokyo, $800 a night. Dinner at Tsukiyabashi Jiro, where Brad somehow secured reservations at the restaurant made famous by the documentary. Shopping in Ginza that would have made a Saudi prince blush. Jennifer posted constantly a digital diary of excess. Designer bags from Chanel and Louis Vuitton. A $10,000 watch for Brad from Seiko's premium line. Spa treatments, helicopter tours, private guides. They were burning through money like wildfire, each purchase an act of faith in a windfall that had already evaporated. "Living my best life," Jennifer captioned a photo from Mount Fuji. "Finally free from all the burdens back home." Burdens? Is that what I'd become? Brad's posts were worse, full of entrepreneurial bromides about taking risks and betting on yourself. He gave interviews to confused Japanese businessmen about his investment strategies, painting himself as a successful trader, taking a well-earned vacation. One video showed him at a pachinko parlor, feeding $100 bills into machines while laughing about playing with house money. The house money. My house. The irony was sharp enough to cut. Margaret documented every meal, every temple, every garden, with the determination of someone who'd never expected to travel beyond Reno. My brilliant son arranged all this, she wrote. So proud of how he's taking care of his family. Taking care, by conspiring to rob his wife's father. Midway through their trip, something shifted. Brad started posting less. When he did appear, his smile seemed forced. Jennifer's photos showed her alone more often, or with Margaret. The happy family facade was cracking. I had Carl investigate. The truth was predictable, but satisfying. Brad's been gambling, Carl reported. Found underground casinos in Kabukicho. He's down $50,000 in 3 days, taking markers from people you don't want to owe money to. Yakuza. Adjacent. They run legitimate businesses with very illegitimate enforcement arms. He thinks he can pay them back with the house money. The house money that didn't exist. Brad was digging his own grave with enthusiastic shoveling, and he didn't even know he'd run out of dirt. Then came the side trip to Macau. Brad convinced Jennifer it was a romantic getaway, but his post from the casino told a different story. High-stakes baccarat, private poker rooms, the kind of gambling that only happens when desperation meets delusion. Jennifer, meanwhile, kept shopping. Her denial had taken on a desperate quality, as if buying enough designer goods could somehow make their fantasy real. She posted a photo from the Wynn Macau draped in new jewelry captioned, "Brad says I deserve the world." What Brad said, and what Brad could deliver, were proving to be very different things. Margaret stayed in Tokyo, visiting hospitals to observe Japanese healthcare. So much to learn for the family business. She posted, apparently unaware her nephew's facility was being shuttered and its residents relocated by state authorities. On their last night in Macau, Brad lost $40,000 in 90 minutes. The security footage, which Carl somehow obtained, showed him sweating through his designer shirt, doubling down on every loss, chasing the dragon of a big win that would solve everything. Jennifer found him at 5 a.m., passed out in their suite with empty bottles and IOU slips he'd signed in desperation. Her social media went dark for 24 hours. When she returned to posting, they were back in Tokyo for their final days. The celebration had curdled into something else. Forced smiles. Separate activities. Brad nursing hangovers while Jennifer shopped alone. Margaret trying to hold it all together with increasingly manic cheerfulness. One more day in paradise. Jennifer posted from Tokyo Station, bags under her eyes, visible despite the filter. Ready to come home and start our new life. Their flight was scheduled to land at SFO at 10 p.m. Sunday. They'd take a taxi to my house exhausted, but still believing in their delusion. The key would slide into the lock just as it had thousands of times before. But this time, it wouldn't turn. I made my own preparations. Checked out of the Fairmont and into a suite at the St. Regis, where I could monitor everything from a distance. Had Carl position surveillance at the house. Alerted Wallace to be ready for the inevitable frantic calls. On social media, their final posts from the airport showed the trip's toll. Brad looked haggard, checking his phone constantly for messages that probably weren't about welcome home parties. Jennifer clutched their boarding passes like life preservers. Margaret had aged 5 years in 2 weeks, the weight of impending disaster visible in her slumped shoulders. Can't wait to sleep in my own bed. Jennifer posted from the gate. Not your bed, I thought. Not your house. Not anymore. As their plane lifted off from Narita Airport, I raised a glass of Ellen's favorite wine in a silent toast. To delusions and their inevitable end. To consequences finally coming home. To lessons that could only be learned the hard way. 11 hours until landing. 11 hours until the key didn't fit. 11 hours until the screaming started. I settled in to wait, patient, as I'd always been. The trap was set, the prey approaching, and all that remained was the spring. The Uber pulled up to my Pacific Heights home at exactly 11:17 p.m., its headlights cutting through the San Francisco fog like accusatory fingers. From my suite at the St. Regis, I watched the surveillance feed on multiple screens, each angle captured in high definition. Carl had outdone himself with the camera placement, invisible to the casual observer, but comprehensive in coverage. Jennifer emerged first, 14 days of excess visible in her designer outfit, and careful makeup that couldn't quite hide the exhaustion. Brad followed, juggling luxury shopping bags and checking his phone with the compulsive twitch of a man expecting bad news. Margaret brought up the rear, her practical nurse's demeanor, replaced by the guilty nervousness of a conspirator whose plan was unraveling. "God, it's good to be home," Jennifer said, her voice captured clearly by the hidden microphones. "I need a real bed and about 12 hours of sleep." "I need to check the markets," Brad muttered. "See what we missed while we were gone." They dragged their Louis Vuitton luggage up the walkway past the garden Ellen had planted 20 years ago, now meticulously maintained by Datatech Industries' property management team. The house looked exactly as it always had, a Victorian lady keeping her secrets behind bay windows and original gingerbread trim. Jennifer reached the front door and inserted her key. The familiar motion of coming home, performed thousands of times since childhood. She turned it, or tried to. The key stuck. "That's weird," she muttered, pulling it out to examine it. "Brad, try yours." Brad handed her bags and attempted his key. Same result. The lock had been changed, of course. Datatech Industries had installed new high-security deadbolts the morning after I'd been committed to Golden Sunset. "What the hell?" Brad's voice rose. "Did you bring the wrong keys?" "These are my keys," Jennifer snapped, the stress of their trip finally showing. "I've had them for 20 years. Margaret pushed forward. "Let me try. Sometimes these old locks get sticky." But her key, copied from Jennifer's years ago, met the same fate. 3 people standing on the doorstep of a house they thought they owned, locked out by their own deception. "Call a locksmith," Brad suggested, pulling out his phone. "At 11 at night. That'll cost a fortune." Jennifer was already dialing. "Dad must have... I don't know. Maybe he changed the locks before we left." The first locksmith refused to come without proof of ownership. The second said the same. By the third call, Jennifer's voice had taken on a desperate edge. "I live here. This is my house. My father. He's in a nursing home. I have power of attorney." "Ma'am," the locksmith said patiently, "I can't change locks without proper documentation. Bring me a deed proof of ownership, and I'll help you out." Jennifer hung up and immediately called David Kremsky. The phone rang once, before an automated message informed her the number was no longer in service. She tried again. Same result. "What's going on?" Margaret asked, though her face suggested she already suspected. "I can't reach David. The facility's number isn't working." Brad, who'd been Googling frantically, looked up from his phone with a pale face. Golden Sunset Manor was raided by the FBI 3 days ago. Shut down for Medicare fraud and elder abuse. David Kremsky's in federal custody. Margaret sat down hard on the porch steps. "No, that's impossible. David would never..." "Mom, not now," Brad snapped. "We need to get inside. Jennifer, call your father. He can explain this." Jennifer dialed my number. I watched her on the surveillance feed phone, to her ear designer heels clicking on the porch as she paced. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello." "Dad, thank God. We're at the house and our keys don't work. Did you change the locks?" "Who is this?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Dad, it's Jennifer, your daughter. We just got back from Japan, and we're locked out." "I'm sorry, you must have the wrong number. I don't have a daughter." "Dad." Her voice cracked. "This isn't funny. We're tired, we just need to get inside." "Ma'am, I think you're confused. This house belongs to Datatech Industries. Has for over a week now." Silence. I could see her face on the monitor, watch the blood drain from it as the words sank in. That's impossible," she whispered. "You can't sell a house from a nursing home. I have power of attorney." "Power of attorney obtained through fraud is invalid," I said calmly. "As your lawyer should have told you when you got my letter. You did get my letter, didn't you? The certified one you signed for before leaving for Japan." She actually swayed, grabbing the porch rail for support. "Dad, please. This is some kind of mistake. We can talk about this. Just let us inside." "I suggest you check under the doormat," I said. There's something there for you. Goodbye, Jennifer. I hung up and watched her scramble to the doormat, lifting it with shaking hands. The envelope was exactly where I'd instructed the property management company to place it. She tore it open, Brad and Margaret crowding close to read over her shoulder. The note was in my handwriting, brief and clear. The house was never mine to give. It belongs to the Boyd family trust. You've been removed as beneficiary. Your belongings are in storage unit 47B at Secure Store on Geary. Dad. The scream started low building from somewhere deep in Jennifer's chest until it erupted into the night air. Neighbors' lights began flicking on. Brad actually punched the door, immediately regretting it, as his knuckles split against the solid wood. Margaret collapsed back onto the steps, her confident facade crumbling into tears. No, no, no! Jennifer was calling my number again, but I'd blocked her. She tried Wallace Sterling next, but his office was closed. This can't be happening. A porch light came on next door. Mrs. Patterson, 90 years old and sharp as ever, stepped onto her porch in a quilted robe. Jennifer, is everything all right, dear? Mrs. Patterson. Jennifer rushed to the fence. There's been a mistake. We're locked out. Have you seen my father? Oh, yes, dear. Saw him just yesterday. Looking wonderful, I must say. Much better than he has in months. He asked me to water his plants at his other property, while he stays at the Fairmont. The Fairmont. Brad's voice was strangled. He's at a hotel. Oh, yes. Said something about renovations here at the house. New owners want to update the kitchen, I think. Such a shame that kitchen has so much character. New owners, Jennifer repeated numbly. A police cruiser turned onto our street, probably called by a neighbor concerned about the screaming. Two officers emerged, hands resting casually on their equipment belts as they approached. Evening, folks. We got a call about a disturbance. Brad tried to take charge. Officers, this is my wife's childhood home. There's been some kind of mix-up with the locks. We just need to get inside. Do you own this property, sir? My father-in-law does, Boyd Richardson, but my wife has power of attorney. The officers exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a tablet, typing quickly. According to property records, this house is owned by Datatech Industries. Has been for, looks like 12 days. That's impossible. Jennifer's control finally snapped completely. This is my house. I grew up here. My father's in a nursing home. He couldn't have sold it. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down, the officer said firmly. Do you have any documentation proving ownership or right to enter? Jennifer fumbled through her purse, producing the power of attorney documents. The officer reviewed them, then shook his head. These give you certain rights regarding your father's affairs, but if he sold the property before entering the facility, or if the property was held in trust, these wouldn't apply. You'll need to contact a lawyer. It's midnight, Jennifer wailed. Where are we supposed to go? The second officer's radio crackled. He stepped away to answer it, then returned with an odd expression. Ma'am, are you Jennifer Sherman? Yes. There's a bench warrant for your arrest. Failure to appear in court regarding fraudulent real estate activities. Jennifer's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Brad hadn't caught her. What, I haven't? There must be a mistake. Additionally, there's a notation here about grand larceny. Something about jewelry valued over $50,000. Ellen's emerald necklace, still around Jennifer's neck, glinting in the porch light like an accusation. I need you to come with us, ma'am. You can contact your attorney from the station. What happened next was chaos. Jennifer crying, begging, trying to explain. Brad arguing with increasing desperation about jurisdiction and procedure. Margaret having what appeared to be a panic attack on my front steps. The officers patient but firm, eventually placing Jennifer in handcuffs as gently as possible, while she sobbed about this all being a misunderstanding. As the police car pulled away with my daughter in the back seat, Brad's phone rang. Even from the surveillance audio, I could hear the menacing tone of the voice on the other end. His bookie, or worse. Payment was due. The house money he'd promised was a fiction, and fiction wouldn't satisfy the kind of people he owed. Margaret tried one more time to reach her nephew, borrowing Brad's phone. This time, she got through to someone, probably his lawyer. Her face crumpled as she listened. Federal custody. Facility shut down. Assets frozen. Investigation expanding. Brad ended his call and stood in the fog, looking at the house that was supposed to save them all. In the distance, a foghorn mourned across the bay. Somewhere, Jennifer was being processed into the system she'd tried to use against me. Tomorrow would bring lawyers' charges the full weight of consequences. But tonight, there was just a locked door and the echo of screams in the fog. I closed my laptop and poured another glass of wine. The spring had been sprung, the trap complete. But I took no joy in it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption. And redemption, I knew from long experience, only came through pain. The hardest part was still to come. Tomorrow, I would face my daughter and offer her a choice. Tonight, let her feel what it was like to be powerless, abandoned, betrayed by those she trusted. Let her understand what she'd tried to do to me. Ellen always said people had to hit bottom before they could rise. Tonight, Jennifer was hitting bottom. Tomorrow we'd see if she had the strength to rise. The Fairmont Hotel's Garden Court restaurant gleamed with morning light, filtering through its stunning glass ceiling. I'd chosen this place deliberately, the same restaurant where I'd brought Jennifer for her 16th birthday, where Ellen and I had celebrated our anniversaries, where beauty and memory intersected in complicated ways. At 8:30, sharp Jennifer appeared in the doorway, escorted by her court-appointed attorney. 24 hours in custody had stripped away her careful facade. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, and reapplied, her hands shaking as she spotted me at a corner table. The emerald necklace was gone, confiscated as evidence. She looked younger, somehow vulnerable, in a way I hadn't seen since she was 12, crying in my arms after Ellen's funeral. 20 minutes, her attorney reminded her. That's all the judge approved. Jennifer approached slowly, as if walking to her execution. I stood pulling out her chair, the gesture of courtesy, seeming to break something inside her. She sat heavily, avoiding my eyes. "Would you like coffee?" I asked. She nodded, unable to speak. I poured from the silver pot, adding 1 sugar and a splash of cream, exactly how she'd taken it since college. The familiar ritual seemed to steady her slightly. "Dad," she began, then stopped, tears threatening. "I don't even know where to start." I pulled out a folder, laying documents on the pristine white tablecloth, like tarot cards revealing the future. Let's start with facts. The Boyd Family Trust, established 1999. Your mother insisted on it when she got sick. She wanted to ensure everything was protected, structured properly for the future. Jennifer's eyes scanned the papers, confusion evident. "I never knew." "Because you never asked. You assumed the house was mine, personally assumed my wealth came only from my salary. You saw what you wanted to see, Jennifer, an old man with assets to plunder." "That's not... I didn't think of it that way." "No." I pulled out another document. "This is the listing agreement you signed with Cushman and Wakefield 3 months ago, for my house, while I was still living in it, while you were still bringing me Sunday dinners and pretending to care." Her hands covered her face. "Brad said it was just to get an idea of value, for estate planning. Brad says a lot of things." I placed crime scene photos on the table, images of Golden Sunset Manor's worst rooms, the ones families never saw. "This is where you sent me. This is what you paid for with my supposed confusion." She looked at the photos and gagged, pushing them away. "I didn't know. David said it was the best facility in the area. Margaret vouched for him. Margaret's nephew is facing 25 years in federal prison. The FBI found systematic theft, abuse, neglect. 1 resident died of untreated bed sores, while David was billing Medicare for premium care that never happened." "Oh God." Jennifer was crying now, not the pretty tears of manipulation, but raw, ugly sobs of realization. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I let her cry, remembering another time she'd sobbed like this. Age 8, Caught stealing candy from a store. Ellen had made her return it. Apologize, face the consequences. Accountability, Ellen had said, is the only way we grow. When Jennifer's tears subsided, I continued. Wallace Sterling documented everything. The fraudulent medical evaluation, the conspiracy to commit elder abuse, the attempt to steal assets through deception. You're facing serious charges, Jennifer. I know. Her voice was small, defeated. The prosecutor said 5 to 7 years if convicted. Brad, arrested last night. His creditors found him at a motel in Daly City. She laughed bitterly. He'd already spent the money he thought we'd get from the house. Owes over $600,000 to people who don't accept bankruptcy as payment. And Margaret? Stroke. She's at SF General. When she heard about David about the FBI raid, Jennifer shrugged helplessly. Everything fell apart so fast. I sipped my coffee, letting silence build. The restaurant hummed with genteel conversation, silver clinking against china, a world away from holding cells and federal investigations. Why? I asked finally. Help me understand why my daughter, who I raised with love, who never wanted for anything, would try to destroy me for money. Jennifer's response came in halting bursts, the story of a marriage rotting from within, of Brad's gambling addiction that started small and metastasized into desperation, of Margaret's whispered poison about waste and unfairness, of mounting debts and sleepless nights, and the slow erosion of moral boundaries that happens when people convince themselves they deserve what others have earned. I told myself you'd be happier, she said, that the house was too big, that you needed care. I convinced myself I was helping. You convinced yourself of a lie because the truth was inconvenient. Yes. The admission seemed to cost her everything. Dad, what happens now? I placed the final document on the table, a contract prepared by Wallace Sterling with his usual precision. You have a choice, I said. Face all charges, go to trial, likely spend years in prison while Brad deals with his own demons and debts. Or sign this confession. Admit to everything fully and completely. Agree to testify against Dr. Haversham and anyone else involved. Accept 500 hours of community service at legitimate elder care facilities. Attend therapy twice a week for 2 years. Work to pay back every penny you stole or attempted to steal. Work who would hire me? I'll lose my real estate license. I would. I smiled at her shock. The Ellen Richardson Foundation for Elder Protection. I'm funding it with the rental income from my commercial properties. We need someone to review facilities, investigate complaints, advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. The salary is modest, $45,000 a year. But it's honest work for an honest wage. You want me to work for you after everything? I want you to work for them. I gestured to the photos of Golden Sunset's victims. For the forgotten ones, the abandoned ones, the ones whose families see them as burdens rather than blessings. You'll report to an independent board, not me. But you'll learn what it really means to care for those who can't care for themselves. Jennifer stared at the contract like it might bite her. And if I refuse, then you face the consequences alone. I'll testify honestly at your trial. The evidence is overwhelming. Wallace says conviction is certain. Brad would never agree to this. Brad isn't invited. Your marriage is over, Jennifer. You know this. He was using you just as you were using me. Parasites feeding on each other while pretending it was love. The truth of it hit her physically. She flinched, nodded, understanding dawning. The Japan trip. He disappeared for hours at a time. Gambling. Always gambling. He said he'd won big, but his hands shook when he said it. Addicts lie, to others, to themselves. You lied too, Jennifer, to both of us. What about Margaret? Margaret will need care herself now. Real care, not the warehousing her nephew provided. Perhaps understanding vulnerability from the other side will teach her empathy. Jennifer picked up the pen, hesitated. Will you ever forgive me? I thought of Ellen, of what she'd say, of second chances and redemption, and the long road back from betrayal. Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. Sign the papers, do the work, earn the chance to ask that question again in 2 years. She signed hands steady now with purpose. As her attorney witnessed, I felt something ease in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, but the possibility of it. The first steps on a long journey. The house, Jennifer asked quietly, will be sold eventually. The proceeds will fund the foundation permanently. It was never about the money, Jennifer. It was about protecting something sacred from those who would profane it. Mom would have hated what I became, she whispered. No. I reached across the table, took her hand for the first time since this began. Mom would have loved you enough to stop you, which is what I'm doing now. Her attorney indicated time was up. Jennifer stood suddenly looking older, worn by truth and consequence. When do I start at the foundation? Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. There's a facility in Chinatown under investigation. You'll accompany the state inspector, learn what to look for, how to spot abuse, how to be the advocate you should have been for me. I'll be there. She paused at the door, turned back. Dad, the photo album, the one I saw you holding at Golden Sunset. Could I have it just to remember? It's in storage unit 47B, along with everything else from the house. The unit's in your name now. Consider it a trust. Keep what matters, sell what doesn't. But remember the difference. She nodded and was gone, leaving me alone with cold coffee and warm memories. Around me, San Francisco's elite chatted over breakfast, unaware of the small drama that had just unfolded. Families rose and fell every day in this city. What mattered was what you built from the ruins. 6 months later, I attended the first board meeting of the Ellen Richardson Foundation. Jennifer presented her first case, a facility in Oakland, showing signs of financial irregularities. Her investigation was thorough, professional, compassionate. She'd learned to see the elderly as people, not problems, to protect rather than prey. Brad was serving 3 years for fraud, his gambling debts dissolved in bankruptcy, but his reputation destroyed forever. Margaret lived in an assisted living facility in Marin, one Jennifer had personally vetted. She visited weekly, learning humility in small doses. The house sold for $3.4 million to a tech couple who promised to preserve its character. I drove by, sometimes watching new children play in Ellen's garden, new lives, building new memories in rooms that had sheltered ours. But the best moment came a year into Jennifer's work with the foundation. We were reviewing cases when she suddenly stopped, looked at me with tears in her eyes. I understand now, she said, why you did it this way. You could have just disowned me, let me fail on my own. But you gave me a chance to become who Mom would have wanted me to be. Who you were meant to be, I corrected, before fear and greed clouded your vision. I was at Chinatown Senior Care yesterday, she continued. Met a woman 93 years old, whose son was stealing her Social Security checks. She was so grateful when I helped her set up a protected account. She cried Dad, said no one had ever stood up for her before. And I realized that's what you did for me. Stood up for the person I could be against the person I'd become. Protected me from myself. That night, I visited Ellen's grave, told her about our daughter's journey back to grace. The fog rolled in from the Pacific, soft and encompassing, like forgiveness itself, like second chances, like love that endures beyond betrayal, beyond pain, beyond death itself. The next morning, Jennifer called. Dad, I was wondering. Sunday dinner, I could cook Mom's pot roast recipe. If you're free? I'm free, I said, and meant it in ways she couldn't yet understand. We ate in her small apartment. Nothing fancy, everything honest. She'd learned to live on her foundation salary, to find richness in purpose, rather than possessions. We talked about her cases, about the people she'd helped, about the future she was building from the ashes of her former life. As I was leaving, she hugged me. Not the quick, obligatory embraces of recent years, but the way she used to as a child, holding on like I was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "I love you, Dad," she said. "Thank you for saving me from myself." Love, I told her, is what we do when people need saving, even from themselves, especially from themselves. The fog parted as I drove home, revealing stars above the city. Somewhere, Ellen was smiling. Our daughter had come home at last, not to a house that could be sold, but to the values that could never be taken away. The fortune that mattered most wasn't in bank accounts or real estate. It was in the capacity to choose love over greed, service over selfishness, redemption over ruin. The house was gone, but the home remained. In Jennifer's work, in the people she protected, in the foundation that bore Ellen's name, in the simple truth that sometimes the greatest inheritance a parent can give is the chance to fail, fall, and rise again, transformed by the alchemy of consequence and compassion. That's the real estate that matters. The ground on which we rebuild our lives after the earthquakes of our own making. The foundation that holds when everything else crumbles. Love. It's the only deed that truly matters, the only inheritance worth leaving, the only home that can never be stolen. Dear readers, this story comes from my heart to yours. If you've ever faced betrayal by those you love most, if you've had to choose between enabling and empowering, if you've learned that sometimes the hardest love is the strongest love, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to practice tough love with someone who'd lost their way? What would you have done in Boyd's situation? Share your experiences and wisdom with our community. If this story touched your heart or made you think about the relationships in your own life, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about families' redemption and the complicated ways we save each other. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late for second chances. Never too late to come home. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the values we pass on and the chances we give each other to become who we're meant to be. Until next time, hold your loved ones close, but hold your values closer. With gratitude and hope for all our journeys home.